What does crash estrogen feel like? Well, fucking sucks.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
All right, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics, TRT, biohacking, and on male performance. Hit the sub button because I know you're going to love the content, and you either owe me a like or you don't owe me a like. You can either go on to the rest of the video or you have to hit the like button. It depends on if you pick heads or tails, so pick it now. Go ahead and pick it. Pick it. Let's flip it. Heads. It landed on heads. If you picked tails, you owe your boy a like. If you picked heads and it landed on heads, you're good to go, and you can proceed forward, my friend. I am the gatekeeper. Who are we? We are Cortex Labs, and we are predominantly a male performance optimization company that specializes in globally shipped nootropic stacks. The most popular of them is the Torque stack, and get it below in the description of this video. You can hire me for consulting on nootropics, TRT, energy optimization, and a host of other things. And we have nootropics courses that are stack written and teach you how to use nootropics, as well as downloadable digital guides with the same at livecortex.com or in the description of this video. What I want to do in this video is I want to discuss what it feels like to crash your serum estradiol. This is something that can easily happen under the use of aromatase inhibitors if you don't have the dose right and you don't have the frequency right, and if you're not running labs, so you don't really understand like where your estradiol goes, how the lab marker correlates with the symptoms that you're having. Like some guys will start feeling itchy nipples, etc., which happens on TRT. That may be an indication that you need to lower the estradiol with an AI. Take an AI, overshoot, and end up with crash estradiol. It's actually really, really easy to take the estradiol below like 15 picograms per milliliter. So I don't want to talk about, I'll talk in the end about kind of how I deal with not crashing estradiol when I'm taking AIs, but I just want to talk about what it feels like to crash serum estrogen. And by the way, this is in the context of TRT, right? You're using testosterone, estradiol gets past a certain point that you're not comfortable with, and you take an AI and you want to lower it and manage it and whatever. And I think for most people, like, it's a good idea to have AIs around, not necessarily to take them all the time, but if you need to drop the estradiol by 10 points to get your sex drive back or erections back or whatever, lower blood pressure, get your body back in that homeostasis, then they're very useful tools, aromatase inhibitors. Okay, so number one thing that happens and how you feel when you crash your estradiol is absolute utter depression. I feel extremely sorry and bad for the women that are menopausal when the estrogen is dropping. And so, like, we know that they're moody and whatever, right? It's like, and I bet like husbands that don't know what that feels like, have been on TRT and haven't crashed estrogen, like, fucking, she's being a bitch and whatever. Yeah, like, no, hey, bro, crashed estrogen induces a depression of sorts that is seemingly like it's the end of the world. You feel like your life is not going to get better. Nothing fucking excites you at all. Your motivation is like absolutely dick. And it's a terrible place to be. The depression that happens with crashed estradiol is so bizarre because logically you can get out of it just by raising the estradiol, raising the TRT dose, taking some HCG or whatever, getting the estradiol, maybe taking some testosterone propionate will pretty quickly get your estradiol up. But you're not going to be there forever, but it feels like you're going to be there forever. And you're like, oh, fuck my life. So you just feel like everything sucks, dude. It is you cannot be happy. It is the crazy state to be in, and you don't want to be there. So yeah, number one, absolute doom and gloom, like fucking walking darkness, depression. Number two, and it's somewhat similar to one or maybe part of one, but we'll make it a separate number, is you lose motivation for everything, right? That drive to be productive, that drive to get things done. I am an extremely productive guy, and when my hormones are in the right place, just like when I'm in the right place, I feel fucking awesome. Like, my baseline is I want to get shit done. I love getting things done. I love waking up in the morning. I love my morning coffee. I'm just motivated for everything. But with crash estradiol, like, when I crashed my estradiol, which I'll explain maybe at the end of the video, and when generally you crash it, like, no motivation for anything. You're just going to feel sullen and downtrodden and just like terribly depressed, and your motivation has just like left your body and you feel like you're never going to get it back. Like, why am I like this? Shit. So that's number two. Number three, libido takes a complete like nosedive. Like, you may have had libido prior. Once you get below a certain threshold, for certain guys, it's going to be different, generally below the 15 picograms per milliliter range, and maybe even between the 15 and 20 picograms per milliliter range of serum estradiol sensitive. It's like the libido, it's like as if you never had a sexual attraction to anything. You become asexual completely. It is the craziest thing when the estradiol, gets below threshold. So if you're used to good libido and you see chicks, if you're a dude or whatever you're into, and like that normally promotes a response or stimulates a response, and you get revved up, like that just does not happen with crashed estradiol. You are absolutely muted and asexual. Libido down the drain. Number 4, and this is probably part of number 3, is usually erection quality goes to shit as well, right? You don't wake up with morning wood. You don't have spontaneous boners, throughout the day. Yeah, if you attempt to have sex, you could probably make it work. I mean, some people lose erections when they get below threshold, and some people's erections are just fine. If I get, the lowest I've taken my estradiol is 12 picograms per milliliter. Erections were okay, but certainly not great, and libido was again, it had left my body completely. But a lot of guys are going to have erectile dysfunction once the estradiol gets below a certain threshold. In line with that, or in addition to that, I guess still in conjunction with number 4 is part of number 4, you lose sensation in your junk. Now that's a scary thing, and it sort of mimics these crazy conditions like PSSD and PFS and post ashwagandha or post lion's mane syndrome, where you actually have no genital sensation at all. Like it just feels completely numb. It might as well. It's just for pissing. That's all it's for, is for peeing. Number 5, because estradiol is protective of your joints, muscles, and tendons specifically. I mean, it's a lot of estradiol in the skeletal tissue, a lot of estradiol in all of those tissues. If you're like me and you go to the gym every day or sometimes twice a day, like it is a lot easier to get injured. I've never done this myself, but I've had people come to me and say that they've done. I've read all about it. It makes sense, right? I mean, you take the estradiol too low and your bones are literally lacking one of the primary and joints and tendons substrates in order for them to be functionally healthy and strong. So like I had a guy come to me for TRT protocol optimization. His doc had prescribed him, 0.5 AZ every 4th day or something on his protocol of every 4th day injections. He was on 190 milligrams a week, I believe, of testosterone cypionate. And eventually, the estradiol went to like 5 picograms per milliliter, which if you've been there before, is like absolutely terrible. And, this is a guy that went to the gym every day, and he was explaining to me that he had injured his right trap, like up here in the trap, to the point where it was giving him like splitting neck headaches, to the point where he could not go to the gym anymore, and he was largely debilitated until he got the estradiol like back up to around 18 to 20. So if you crash the estradiol, like you're more than likely, if you're hitting it hard at the gym, going to get injured. Or, if it's not some major injury, you're going to just have like substantial I mean, this guy was like, dude, I'm having migraines. Like it was the worst experience of my life. Number 6, I think. If I got the numbers wrong, sorry, I apologize. Is your hair starts to thin. Now, a lot of guys think that TRT and hair loss is strictly due to dihydrotestosterone increases, and it isn't. Yeah, sure. Yes, DHT has a lot to do with it, but try taking your estradiol sub 15 picograms per milliliter and letting it sit there for the next 3 months. You're going to go next to ball, or close to it. Your hair it depends on your genes, right? Your hair is going to start thinning. You take the estradiol too low, estradiol in adequate concentrations does promote follicle health in your scalp. So it isn't just about DHT. This whole like everybody on TRT loses the hair, which is not true. People are typically attributing it exclusively to testosterone and the subsequent 5-alpha reduction to DHT. It's just not true. While DHT plays a role, you take the estradiol too low and you are going to rapidly accelerate hair loss. So those of you that are chronic AI users, you may want to consider that. I'm not saying don't use the AI. Believe me, I use aromatase inhibitors, when they need to be used, and I think, most guys should. But again, everything has a balance. You do not want to take the estradiol too low. Number 7, now this is rare, but you can actually run into temporary cardiac symptoms which make you think that your heart is in trouble. Palpitations, you may have some chest pain, you may just feel short of breath, those kind of things. It's temporary. It's the kind of stuff that if you go and read how what the experiences are of the women that are in menopause and postmenopause, even premenopause, they deal with this kind of stuff. Like they're not in immediate cardiac danger, but the heart is like freaking out because it doesn't have enough estradiol. So you can actually run into palpitations, shortness of breath, all these things that are associated with cardiac issues, not have an actual serious, clinically significant cardiac problem, but it feels like it, and your heart's going crazy, you have palpitations, you're up all night, you're sweating, all this kind of crazy shit. So again, Don't take the estradiol below your threshold. Now let's talk about, so those are the things. It just feels terrible. I crashed my estradiol one time, so I'll quickly go through that. My range is 20 to 30. Now I can sit at 35 and feel okay, but libido and erections are just not as great as if it was like, honestly, 27 is like my magic number. It's really hard to keep it exactly at 27, but 27 is a good number for me. 25, fine. I had been on an aromatase inhibitor protocol of an every other day administration of aromatase inhibition. I was on a pretty high dose of testosterone at that time. I'd been using HCG for a considerable time, during that period. Now, HCG creates this intratesticular aromatase expression, which is somewhat resistant to aromatase inhibitors. So it's like pretty hard to crash the estradiol on HCG. And then the HCG that I had reached past the point where it's pretty clear that the HCG starts to denature and it's not as effective as it was. So I stopped using it and then, tried to get more HCG in, which took some time, but didn't change the AI protocol. And I was just about to run labs because I'm conscious of this. You got to be conscious of everything, right? I've removed the HCG. There's probably less aromatase expression. The estradiol may go down. I was just about to go and run labs when boom, it hit.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
The depression, the lack of motivation, the libido went to nowhere. I don't know where the fuck it went. Complete and utter depression and just like feeling like, wow, my life sucks. Everything's terrible. I don't want to tend to anything. I don't want to do anything. You couldn't fucking bother me with anything, bro. And this chick who I go to dinner with and do things with, I wanted nothing to do with her. Like, I didn't want to answer a text, dude. I just wanted to do absolutely nothing. Maybe watch movies, and that wasn't fun. So, the bottom line is, even if you think you have a set it and forget it dose of anastrozole, which a lot of guys like get to that point where some guys make that happen, and some guys have a really difficult time, predominantly because their test isn't high enough and they don't have like aromatase expression and estrogen that's sort of resistant to AIs, which would be induced by human chorionic gonadotropin, that intratesticular aromatase expression. At the same time, guys are on 120, 130 or something, you're really not going to need an AI on a consistent schedule at that point. If the estradiol gets a little too high to start having symptoms, take 0.06, 0.125, maybe 0.25. It depends on how you respond to AIs, and then let it sit for a week, right? Let the estradiol build back up thereafter. You don't want to continue taking it if you're on these low doses of testosterone. That's just what I've seen. Are there exceptions? Sure. I've seen guys on 105 milligrams a week that have to take 0.25 twice a week to keep the estradiol at 30. They got a lot of aromatase expression. Maybe they're overweight or they drink too much or whatever. Ultimately, the best way to not crash the estradiol is like, you got to really hyper frequently run labs. I always tell people, like, you want to know how much at what dose of anastrozole is taking the estrogen down. So the day after you dose it, which would be 24 hours, which is really when it's peaking and it has the most maximization of reduction in estradiol, that's in the anastrozole literature. That is when you want to run labs. Okay, it took it from 35 to 18 from just that dose. Got it. You also then want to, not take another AI for the moment, and then you want to run labs again at like day 4, day 5. I mean, you can even do it at day 3 in the middle of the day, because that's when the anastrozole half-lifing out of the system, right? Some of it's still inhibiting aromatase, but a good degree of it is out and not. And so the estradiol is starting to come back. So what is estradiol on day 4? Okay, maybe now it's 23 picograms per milliliter, whereas it had gone down to 18. Maybe it's 25 picograms per milliliter. Maybe it bumped all the way back up to 27, 28, or 30 picograms per milliliter, which then influences, it gives you raw data on the frequency and the dosing of your, AIs thereafter to keep it in that range where you've identified, because it's, seems to be different for different people, although generally 20 to 30 is a good range, where you have libido, erection quality, you feel good, you're motivated, you're not depressed, and, your joints feel good and strong. I will say one thing about estradiol. It's like, the lower estradiol state is really great for the physique. I mean, you look dry and whatever. However, like for muscle building, too low estradiol is actually not great. You know what I mean? When I was crashed, like I felt like my workouts were weaker. Like I was generally weaker in the gym, but my muscles looked a lot less full. Some of that fullness in your physique is water, and and you need some of it there, guys. But again, I want to be clear. If I go above, call it 40 picograms per milliliter, if I'm sitting at 50, like, there's no way I'm going to look as lean as I do right now. For sure, my face is going to to be extra bloated. I'm going to just have like unnecessary water weight everywhere. My digestion is going to slow down. My dick stops working, basically. Libido is still actually okay on high estradiol, but you know, heart rate's up, all this kind of weird, funky stuff happens. So I got to keep it in a tight range where I feel good. So, you know, both ends of the spectrum here. Not telling you not to take an AI. I'm not telling you not to manage estradiol. I'm telling you, you know, generally you want to keep in that 20 to 35 range, but you don't want to crash the estradiol.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Last thing I'll say is that if you've crashed your estrogen, the first thing that you should do is inject more testosterone, maybe even double the dose. Do that for 2-3 days. That may mess up your rhythm a little bit, but you're going to get the estradiol back pretty quickly. We're talking about 3 to 4 days. It should be back in where you're feeling somewhat normal again. It may take time to recover thereafter to get it to where like you feel completely comfortable and you're good. In addition to that, human chorionic gonadotropin. If you're injecting HCG, you're going to upregulate the aromatase expression of the testicles relatively quickly. You'll convert more of your testosterone to estrogen, and that will get you, your estradiol back within a reasonable range where you pull yourself out of that crazy black hole. In addition to that, a strategy that, you know, perhaps if you're a biohacking connoisseur, if you're really into this stuff and you want to take it to the next level, you should have around is testosterone propionate. You know, I wouldn't necessarily suggest, unless you're into it and it works well for you, injecting every day or every other day with propionate or using that for TRT, but you're going to quickly, via the very quick rise in testosterone and the quick conversion to estradiol, you're going to elevate the serum estradiol pretty quickly and in high concentrations if you're dosing testosterone propionate. As I said in the beginning, we got a bunch of different products. Yeah, look, I am a consultant on TRT. You know, if you run into this issue, if you want to know how to not run into this issue or get your estradiol back up or dial in your TRT protocol, it's one of the main things that I do consultations on, which you can book an email consult or a call consult or bigger programs, livecortex.com. You need to dial your protocol in. We can do that as well. I also consult on the topic of nootropics relating to regimen formulation, brain performance in general, energy, host of things. Check out my specialties in description of this video or at livecortex.com. The Torque Stack, this is the most powerful nootropic stack you're going to get your hands on for the price. I mean, this thing should honestly be $60, $70 because it is a highly effective nootropic stack, but we keep it in a reasonable range for people to be able to purchase it. Go buy Torque, livecortex.com. If you want instant energy that lasts a considerable amount of your day, that makes you feel motivated, gets you like in a great mood, makes you very productive and feeling good, go buy Torque down the description of this video. And don't forget, you owe me a like. If you pick tails and this thing landed on heads, be a man. All right, do what's right. Hit that like button, my friend. If you picked heads and it landed on heads, you're good to go. You don't have to give me a like, but I'd still appreciate it if you do. It actually makes a really big difference, guys. Honestly. All right, everyone. Talk to you next time.